Welcome to A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life. This is the place to be for stories to inspire and uplift when life doesn't go according to our plans. I'm Laura Muirhead, your host and the reigning queen of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life. I can't wait to share the plot twist stories of my guests that will inspire and uplift you when life didn't follow the plan, right here on A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life podcast. Hello, and welcome to this episode of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life. I'm your host, Laura Muirhead, and I am so happy to welcome one of my favorite people and definitely one of my favorite guests on A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life, a returning guest, Kristy Iris. We are going to do a little mashup today of Fizome Your Home and Queen Code. So, Kristy, welcome. And please come and introduce yourself to those who are listening who may not have met you before, and tell us about yourself and what you do.
Oh, thank you, Laura. Well, the Fizome Your Home. I am Kristy Iris, and Fizome Your Home, and you can also Fizz Your Biz, is my creation that is about conscious creatives connecting home and soul. It grew out of my original career as a theater designer, creating make-believe worlds for make-believe people. And I wanted my home to support me in my dreams and my goals. I was in a really awful marriage at the time, and it really helped me get out of that. And then friends started coming over and saying, "Your house feels so different. Did you get new furniture?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like I'm playing around with stuff, and they're like, "Come make my house feel so good." And that was back in the 1900s. I've been doing this a long time, and it has evolved. And some people will go like, "Oh, this sounds like feng shui," and it is like feng shui. It's an alternative to feng shui. It's a very personal, intuitive approach to connecting our homes and our souls and the energy in our space, but also making it very functional. And I am excited to talk to you. Here's this podcast was me saying, "Laura, I want to have a conversation with you about boundaries and personal boundaries, because I know with you and your Queen Code, you exude like personal boundaries. And I love that about you. I love how you have this amazing balance of being so kind, and there's such a gentleness to you, and yet you have these boundaries. You just have this sense of self that I admire so much." And I noticed that boundaries were coming up with clients that I've been working with. I didn't realize how much Fizome helps people learn and practice establishing boundaries by just even moving things and saying like, "Okay, this is your space in the bathroom. This is my space. This is what I need to see when I walk into the kitchen, because your stuff is the first thing I see, and it's making me angry because it's a mess every time I walk in. So I'm going to move your stuff out of the way so you can have mess over here and be you, and I can see beautiful things that make me happy." And I'm noticing like people are getting stronger in their own sense of self, and it's helping their relationships get stronger. And I felt like there's a lot to be said about boundaries. So I wanted to have a conversation with you about the internal stuff, because I feel like I like to take that internal stuff and go, "Okay, what are we going to do externally?" But I just felt like, oh, I wanted more of your genius around your boundaries.
Oh my goodness, thank you. Even when you're just talking, things are coming up for me that I'm thinking about with that. And I love that you brought up the kitchen, because it's kind of, I don't know, you tell me, but I feel like it's kind of the heart of our home.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of our main places that it seems like we tend to gather. We tend to hang out, even if you're cooking and you're want people to get out of my kitchen. I'm trying to cook maybe, but
Yeah.
this is where we gather and people are watching or talking to you, but one of the things that just was coming up for me when you were saying that is uh, a lot of us live with other people.
Mhm.
And so if you have a partner or children or people who are leaving messes in the kitchen, and maybe you're waking up in the morning and here's all the dishes from the night before, and maybe for some of you, I love your face on this one. Like,
They're blue.
are you, does that make you crazy? For whoever left the mess, it's okay. Um, but
Clearly, I don't know about that at all, Laura.
uh, but then here's the thing. So how do you find the balance of saying, all right, I can't completely change this person.
Mhm.
Maybe you can ask. Maybe you
Mhm.
can ask and say, listen, this makes me nuts.
Mhm.
But then there's also, depending, I guess it just depends on the people too. I would say if it's your children who are
Mhm.
leaving the mess, then definitely I would say, listen, kids, mama doesn't love it when you leave the dishes in the sink. We have a dishwasher right here. The dishwasher's name is not mama. So open the dishwasher and put the stuff in the dishwasher.
Right.
I would say, and chime in when you want on this.
Yeah.
I would say if it's your partner, there might be more of a delicate balance with that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Maybe there is something where you don't know. I would say it doesn't have to be a full blown fight. I think there's a level of
Mm.
respecting each other also,
Mhm.
and maybe it is a matter of saying, well, maybe try to say, okay, let's have a rule. When I was growing up, we had a sort of a joke rule,
Mhm.
you, where it was like, oh, you cooked, I clean up.
Mhm.
But it kind of was a rule. It wasn't a hard, fast rule, but it kind of was like, well, I cooked, you clean.
Mhm.
And but at the same time, there was also the expectation when I was growing up, and this is where I think a lot of our habits or boundaries come from. You don't have to be your boundaries when you're grown. But I
Mhm.
think this is where a lot of our habits come from. If
Mhm.
if I was like, hey, I'm gonna make cookies. Okay, well, clean up after yourself. So for me, that kind of carried over.
Mhm.
In fact, let me tell you a story. This is so ingrained in me
Mhm.
that we were expected to pick up our own dishes after we ate. Like we
Mhm.
have family dinner.
Mhm.
Carry your own dishes over, rinse them, and put them in the dishwasher. That was a pretty hard and fast rule in our house.
Mhm.
Um, so let's fast forward to however many years, um, to me being an adult and being
Mhm.
married,
Mhm.
and it's so ingrained in me that I can't not do that.
Mhm.
And my husband is frequently like, "I'll get it," and I'm like, I can't not do it. I
Mhm.
can't not do it." My nervous system goes, "No,"
Right.
like maybe I'll get in trouble. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. You think about like I think there's so many ways that it is ingrained in how we live, like just those automatic things of how we live that we're not even conscious of how we're supposed to be in homes. And it's funny as you're talking about also it's like there's part of me that goes, all comes back to the patriarchy. Like this, these roles in our homes in heterosexual households, the gender roles are so ingrained for a lot of us. And I've had more than one woman just burst into tears when I've said like we've lost so much, I think, this sense of magic of what our homes can be and this deeper connection to our homes, because they have just become like burdens and such huge responsibilities for the heterosexual women, that that home is just like has lost so much joy between the expectations of this museum grade home that's like tidy and neat all the time, and and then, decorated like Pinterest, and then all the roles and the, the mental, the emotional, the physical load of maintaining that. It's just become such a huge burden. And then on top of it, women are, usually working a full-time job as well. And then, children and all that stuff. And not just even children, like even like the pets. Like, I have a friend who doesn't have kids, and she's like, oh my God, like the dog and the men, like carrying that, just to, like, the dog was going through health issues, and just like, it's a lot, so like, I'm like, this is a lot deeper than I really even thought about it, Kristy. Um, but yeah, so um, I am single now, and I have to admit, like, I would, go to bed and the kitchen would be clean, and that seemed like a opportunity to, make a nice meal for somebody else who was a night person, and I'd wake up and the kitchen would be like, there'd be, the stove would be a mess, the counter would be a mess, the sink would be full of, and I still sometimes wake up in the morning and I'm not perfect at clearing out my sink every night, but when I do, I'm like, sometimes I just stare at the empty sink. Like, I went to bed with it empty and it's still empty. But the boundaries are, besides the kitchen, like, I have I have a child right now. I have a child who's 10 years old. So we have had to establish boundaries, and like, okay, this is my zone. No, you cannot, like, do not take stuff off of my desk. Do not sit at my desk. Do not play with my stuff. I have paintbrushes. Some of my paintbrushes you can use. I was always very adamant about, like, kids not using those crappy paintbrushes, because they don't work for anybody. Like, I always made sure you had decent art supplies, so that I think crappy art supplies for kids just kind of works against an innate talent. It's hard to make, like, paint decently when you have really awful supplies. So, but yes, there are some paintbrushes that I have. You just no, nope. And I have the expensive paint. If that is, you have your own paint. You have decent paintbrushes. But so there are some very you know, boundaried things, and then there are other areas that are a little more free flowing
Well,
and
and that's
also
it.
messy.
That's kind of it, even in general with the Queen Code, is that you've got your hard boundaries, and
Mhm.
then you've got your little more softer things. And I actually call boundaries personal policies, because I feel like
Mm.
that's what they are. And I could tell you, when you're speaking about your desk, one of my things in general is, if you borrow something of mine without asking me, at least put it back where you found it, so that I don't go looking for it or need it and it's not there. But I think that it's, again, this is sort of a joke, but not a joke for me. I have a stapler that has been my friend for a, a couple of decades
Yep.
now. I
Mhm.
cannot find a stapler like that again. And
Mhm.
I have, in more recent years, gone to buy a new stapler, and they don't cut the mustard.
Mhm.
They just don't.
Yeah.
And the stapler that I have, I don't have it here, I'd show you. It's just a handheld one.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not a it's not
Yeah.
a desk flat one.
Mhm.
And don't take my stapler.
Yeah.
Don't, don't take it.
Hmm.
And I mean, I think somebody recently used it and I was like, okay, you guys know, like, put the stapler back. Like, I think
Right.
everybody who is common to this house knows that.
Yeah.
Don't mess with my stapler.
Right, right. And anybody who's listening who sews, like you just don't touch. I think you even posted once about like you don't touch somebody else's shears,
The
the
scissors.
scissors, the sewing scissors. I mean, because they can be, I mean, they can be very expensive, and to, sometimes they just can't even be sharpened, and they're an extension of yourself, like my paintbrushes. And you can ruin a pair, like you never cut fabric, scissors, shears with paper. Never, like, mm-mm, mm-mm. And I learned that the hard way in a costume shop when I was 19, and I just picked up somebody's shears and she ripped me a new one. Now, afterwards, when she realized, like, this was new, I was very green as Kermit the Frog, and she then was like, "Look, you just can't do this." But that has stayed with me. Like, I,
Well, and that's it. I think of, like, I obviously you're an artist, I'm an artist. So the tools of art, these matter. They matter that if
yeah,
go to use it and it's not there, or you go to use it, it's like the scissors.
mhm,
People don't know that. They don't
mhm,
know that you're gonna ruin or dull them. You go to cut
mhm,
your fabric and you can't cut it now
mhm,
because
mhm,
they don't cut right.
mhm,
So these are things that are important, and I think there's a level in our homes when we're living with people. I think there's a level of trying to find that mutual ground of what can we live with and what can we not, like, what, and trying to also be on a level of respect with people. I know for me that if I go into the kitchen to try to create whatever I'm going to create in there, a mess,
mhm,
but if I'm going to make cookies or make breakfast or something. Now, I have to say that I grew up in an equal shared responsibility of cooking.
mm,
Um my dad and my stepmom both cooked. My dad was a really good cook in my house. Now,
mhm, mhm,
my husband does most of the cooking, and I'm very grateful for that. Um, but if I'm gonna cook breakfast, and I do once in a while, um, and I have to tidy up a little more than usually what it is, and it's not. And I'm not saying it's a mess. I just have
mhm,
to make sure, and I have a different process for cooking than he does.
mhm,
So, and I think for the most part, we're both okay with that.
mhm,
But you do have to, like, for me, if it wouldn't be worth saying, "Oh my gosh, look at this, blah 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 blah," if I felt that way,
mhm.
because I don't do most of the cooking. So when I'm kind of I don't know, the guest chef of the day,
Yeah.
I have to, I'm not gonna, I wouldn't complain about that. I wouldn't come into
Mhm.
your kitchen, into Kristy Iris's kitchen and go, Kristy, none of your things are in the right place for me, right? So I think it so depends on the
I'm sorry. I would,
situation.
yeah, see, I would be, if you're gonna cook in my kitchen, you just put anything you want, wherever you want. Like, I really hate cooking. I really, I do not enjoy the food process at all. So I'd be like, you just put anything where you want. It's your kitchen now. Go at it. Like,
And don't give it back to me. I'll be
oh
happy
no.
to let you have it. So I think these are things, and
Mm,
even I think it's so dependent on personalities and trying to find that, and I also think that, again, when you're raising children, I think it's a little bit different situation than when
mhm,
you're not, because I think, at least from my experience, you try to find a little bit more mutual, here's the rules of the house, versus,
Mhm.
like for my husband and I, we got married after the child, well, except, I mean, my son lived with us through high school, but
Mhm.
the kids were for the most part grown, so we didn't have to establish all the
Yeah.
really solid rules of the road and establish, we just had to find the more mutual ground for us, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And luckily, for the most part, I feel like we're on the same page with things. I actually have heard his son say, like, "Oh, I don't want to come over to your house and make a mess. Your house is always so like neat and tidy." And I'm like, like, I don't feel like I'm at the museum level, and I don't want to be at the museum level. I really don't.
Mhm.
I want to be at the comfortable level. And
Mhm.
there are times when we've got piles of papers. I
Okay.
know, yeah, we've
Yeah.
got, and then those get moved around. Like they're
Mhm.
frequently on the dining room table. We don't have a kitchen table. Our dining room and our kitchen sort of
Mhm.
are one. So, a lot of times I actually move, I'm working out there just to
Yeah.
be in the bigger open space versus being in an office.
Mhm.
So my laptop and I are out there, and maybe I'm opening mail and making a pile or whatever, and opening packages that are
Yeah.
potentially sitting there for a minute, but eventually it gets moved and tidied up. But I don't for and again, like what level are you comfortable at? Like if
Mhm.
you have to be comfortable in your own. I mean, this is it,
Yeah.
right? To
Yeah.
be comfortable. And um you know if there's something that is really, really on your nerves, I would suggest that you address it, but, like, I wouldn't go at it in the, like, height of anger. I would try to go at it in a more gentle way of saying,
Mm.
"Hey, could we potentially not leave the shoes in the middle of the walkway?"
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
And I and that's where I come in with a lot of clients, and I am neurospicy, and I work with a lot of people who are diagnosed, self-diagnosed, or probably somewhere in the world of having some neurodiversity. And so often it is harder for one person or all people to have the brain wiring to keep things tidy, to think like, oh, I walk in the door and I take off my shoes and I put them here and I put this here and I put it here. But sometimes what it is we don't have those systems set up in our homes. So sometimes it's like, well, this person, can't um, put this thing away. And it's like, well, it turns out they need to have like storage containers that they can see into what things are, and labels. And so if we put things, and create a functional place that works with how their brain is wired and what they need and how they function, and also just what their own personal the history is and what how they experienced home. I think that can help so much, and I know I have often been the scapegoat of like, well, Kristy said we gotta do that. Kristy said, they blame it on, and I'm cool with, like, that's cool, I'm here for that because I'm not there. But rather than blaming each other, if that brings more peace in the house, put it on me, that's fine.
Well, and that's the thing too, like, I we have places for our shoes.
Hmm.
We have a place by our back door for shoes, and then
Hmm.
but I tend to, unfortunately, walk in and kick them off somewhere else,
Yeah.
and they might sit there. I don't know if that bothers my husband, he's never said that it has, but I'll eventually move them. In my mind, I know for a fact I have a pair of slippers by the front door because I walked out, in the cold to take a picture, and when it was snowing, and I
Hmm.
didn't want to walk through the house with my wet slippers, so those need to get put away. But it's
Yeah.
just a level of, hopefully finding that mutual ground. The
Yeah.
other thing, and when we're talking about, I want to just give a example too um, of how I know a lot of boundaries is a four-letter word for a lot of people. Like people, a lot of
Mm.
times are like, What do you mean boundaries?
Mhm.
I can't set boundaries. I don't want boundaries. Why? Oh. And those, this is why it's more, one of the reasons why I call them personal policies, because
Mhm.
they are like I said, they could be a hard no. Like maybe for someone, my shoes being by the front door right now, maybe that would just, well, again, here another
Yeah.
example. Growing up, the rule was take your shoes off immediately when you walk through the door.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of people, I know for a lot of different reasons, have that rule, and that's fine. Um, I actually, when I kick my shoes off, I walk into my house sometimes and kick them off. It depends on where I am, and it depends on what I've been doing. I used to have a horse stable. I
Mhm.
guarantee you, when I took my shoes off before I stepped into my house when I had my
Yeah.
horse stable.
Thank
So it's
goodness.
just a different thing, but
That
what works for you, and but
Mhm.
there's a level of the hard nose, there's a level of the one day it could be this, one day it could be something else.
Right.
But if we think about it, like think about even like fencing your yard. Like if you think about putting a fence up, we put a fence when we bought our house in Michigan. There was no fence, but we had 3 dogs. So
Mhm.
what was one of the first things we had to do was set that boundary. Now, when you think about it in that respect, it actually gave everybody a lot of freedom.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
gave my dogs, setting that boundary of putting a fence in my backyard, gave my dogs the freedom to run in their yard. It gave my neighbors freedom to know that my dogs are not going to run in their yard,
Mhm.
and gave us peace of mind. So, like, if you think about your personal policies in that way,
Mhm.
when you set them for yourself, you're also setting them for others. So you're
Yeah.
setting them for the people around you as well to know, "Whoop, nope, don't take her stapler,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know, and put it back if you do." Um, and and that's just a silly thing. It's not. But it's not.
No. No,
And
it's really not. Isn't there the saying something like, "Fences make good neighbors"?
yeah,
That
good strong, yes, good fence. There's a saying, strong
fences
fences make good
make good
neighbors.
neighbors.
And
Yeah.
it's true because they
Mhm.
know, like, because you wouldn't want, some people feel like, what are they doing in my yard?
Right. Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah.
Growing up, we had a neighbor, who was an angry old man, and I can tell you, like, I wish we had a fence. Our other neighbors on the other side had a fence because they had a dog, um, but our neighbor, he would sit in his driveway. It was weird. The driveways went down, and our garages were, like, under the house in the back,
Mm.
and so he would sit in in the driveway watching us play kickball, and if our ball went into his backyard, he would actually run and take our balls from us. And then eventually he had enough of a collection, and my dad would sneak into his garage and take our balls back. Oh, he was such a miserable, I mean, and he would yell at my dad also if my dad, um, mowing the grass would, some of his our weeds got into his grass. He would get his grass treated with like Miracle Grow or whatever, and then all the birds would fall dead out of our trees. Hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Oh boy.
Yep. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
I think again, and like even what you're talking about, like I know I have a really good friend who like has a really organized kitchen and has everything labeled in
Yeah.
Tupperware and in all the
Yeah.
things, and that's awesome. It's so good.
Hmm.
But f- um if that's something that you can maintain, she can maintain that,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
If I could ask her to come in and do that in my house, and I guarantee you we couldn't maintain that.
Hmm.
So if that's something like, if being completely, and I'm not saying don't have a place for things, if
Yeah.
things need to have a place. I agree with so much with that. And but if you can't maintain it, like you have to live in your house as well.
Yeah.
So if that would actually give you anxiety to try to be like, oh, I've got to keep this up because I, hired someone to come in and organize me and I can't do it. Like it
Hmm.
like give like I guess what I'm trying to say is also like know yourself and be like
Hmm.
accept yourself as well and
Yeah.
what level you can maintain because yeah there maybe in maybe in your craft room or in your kids room or in your maybe with their toys it's easy to maintain that or you want the kids to maintain that like clean up
Right.
every day and put things put the Legos in the bin so mama's not stepping on them, yes please.
Yeah.
um and that would be a great thing to potentially teach the kids as well.
Yeah.
But, maybe you can't maintain that on a different level. Maybe your unmentionable drawer is a little bit of a mess and you're okay with
Mm.
that.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
you know? I
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
chime in on that one.
Well, I think that the mental, your own drawer. That's actually, and maybe this is shifting a little bit. This is another reason I wanted to talk to you about personal policies and boundaries, and with one's self, and not just with the people that you live with, but your own boundaries. And it really has come up this month because I started a new program called BizFiz for conscious, creative, spiritual entrepreneurs who live and work at home. Obviously, you live at home, but work at home as well. And so we have create. So we're working. It's about really a lot of it is creating these boundaries between working in a certain part of our home and then living in the rest of our home and having these boundaries. And what has really come up that we're working on, it's like, there's such a oneness, like everybody's kind of in the same places. These boundaries of, we've been talking a lot about being in ebb and flow, and I think in a more conscious space, we're really, I love that we're in a place where a lot of us are trying to honor that rest is sacred and it is part of the work that we need to do. And so this ebb time happens, and honoring that and surrendering to it. But then what are the personal policies that we need to have in place when we are in ebb and still need to get things done, and how do we do that and honor our own energy levels, but then also when that kind of breaks and we're in this flow and the energy and it's like okay, it's like the dam breaks, and how do we create um like riverbanks to flow into, which are personal policies, the boundaries of like what kind of boundaries do we have to set up for ourselves, like okay, when we're doing this, like even like these are the things I have to get done during the day, and here's what's non-negotiable, and I have that policy with myself. So that's where I was excited to talk to you, and I'm watching you. I love that bobblehead of like, yes. So that's all the background of where we're at and what's been coming up a lot this month. And I am so like inspired by you.
I have a lot to say about that.
I hoped you would.
Because I do work from home.
Hmm.
And am fortunate enough to have actually two offices. This
Hmm.
office,
Hmm.
which is also with the help of Kristy Iris, has been Fizomed. And so I love this space. I love this space for doing what we're doing, for
Hmm.
being on Zoom calls, for being, talking to people, doing Facebook Lives. I love this space for that. It also this it was my creative space for my
Hmm.
photography and things like that as well. Now, again, I'm really fortunate because I have just like overflowed into other spaces in my home. We
Mhm.
have a room that is sort of it always it's an odd room that we never were sure how like they what how they meant it to be when they designed the
Mhm.
house.
Mhm.
And it was my when I was doing really doing a lot more photography work, it was my like matting room. My mats were in there, my table for matting. Um, so I have, and now I have a laser cutter that has has lives in that room. Um, yeah, and so like it's kind of my crafty room now.
Mhm.
And then I have my downstairs office,
Mhm.
which is where I keep my it's where I do my work for our business. I
Mhm.
We own a business. If you haven't been here before, my husband and I own a family business. I'm the vice president and CFO of that business. So that's where that's my business
Mhm.
office, and
Mhm.
it always has been my business office. Um, and but okay, so I know for me that I do my best work, like bookkeeping work, at the beginning of the day.
Mhm.
And sometimes this is where I could potentially have better personal policies, but they
Mhm.
work for me, so I kind of don't care. Again, this is like
Yeah.
who's gonna care? And we're gonna have a little behind the scenes look into my world.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, a lot of times because I know that because I know my brain works better that way in the morning, and I also know that if I get my bills and my bookkeeping stuff done in the morning, then whatever comes up in the afternoon, I didn't forget to do something. I didn't get to 5 o'clock at night and go, oh crap, I didn't do
Mhm.
print that, we didn't get that check put out, I didn't pay that bill or whatever it is. So I know that for me, that's my best, like, get it done, move it off my plate. So
Mhm.
if my husband says, hey, let's go to lunch, I'm not going, "Oh, well, because it does happen for me that if I did that, let's say I didn't do my bookkeeping
Mhm.
in the morning, and he said, hey, let's go to lunch. By the time I get back from lunch, I may not feel like doing that. Or I may forget, oh shoot, I forgot I was supposed to do XYZ.
Mhm.
So I will go into the office, and a lot of times I might end up spending more time in my pajamas than I expected to,
Mhm.
because I was just like, I'll just go do this. I'm in my jammies, and I'm just going to go ahead and do this work. But
Mhm.
that might morph into, oh, look, I'm still in my pajamas. But it doesn't matter. And then if he says, hey, let's go to lunch, I'll be like, okay, but let me get in the shower. And
Right.
it's not going to be in 10 minutes. It's going to be, if you can wait to go to lunch till I'm, had my shower and stuff. So, but at the same time, when I'm in my creative flow, as far as like wanting to work on, um, you know, weekly emails, or maybe I'm inspired to get on Canva and do a little something there, maybe not even inspired, maybe it's something that I'm like, oh, I need to create a something. Or if I'm working on a
Mhm.
program that I'm creating, or working on my website, or like all these
Mhm.
other things,
Mhm.
uh I might be down there working,
Mhm.
but maybe I don't feel like being in the office anymore. And that's where I'm talking about when I might move out
Right.
to the dining room table.
Yeah.
Or I might even, depending on what I'm up to, bring my laptop and sit on the couch while we're watching TV together. So
Mhm.
that even though I'm working and not really watching TV,
Mhm.
we feel like we're connected.
Yeah.
Or a lot of times, if I'm writing an email, I like to just ask my husband's opinion of, what do you think, wording, whatever. And I can just hand my laptop over to him and say, so what do you think?
Yeah.
Um, but like, I also like working up here. So I'm jumping around a bit.
Yeah, yeah. I think
I
we
also
all do
like
that.
working up in this space, because I'm not on a laptop, I'm on a desktop. And
Mhm.
if I'm working on something, sometimes depending on what I'm working on creative, this is one of the reasons why I liked working on my photography up here, because I can see it better. I can see it in a bigger screen. I can see it um, in better lighting. And so, if I'm working on like sometimes when I'm working on like things that are meant to be printed or meant to be, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
those kinds
yeah,
of things.
yeah,
Sometimes I want to see it bigger.
yeah.
Um, so, but I still think, having said all of that, I do try to be done with my day around, if not before 5 o'clock,
Mhm.
by 5 o'clock. And once in a while, depending on what I'm working on, I know there's something I was working on last week, and was just in the like, oh, my website. We're updating my website,
Mhm.
which is not a small task. Um, and I was working on a page on that, and so all of a sudden I was like, oh, 5:30. Whew,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know. So, but I was at the kitchen. I was at the dining room table, and so I wasn't removed from what was happening in the household. Really, it was
Right.
there, but at the same time, there's times when I might be there, and depending on what's happening in the household, I need to go back in the office because I need that quiet space.
Mhm.
So I really do, for me, feel like a lot of it is like honoring me,
Yeah, yeah.
and what I feel like in the moment, what I feel like I need, what I feel like, um, do I want to be, is it, a sunny day and I want to be more, we get a lot of light in our back end of the house more than
Mhm.
my other downstairs office is on the front end, more the north side of the
Mm.
house.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it just, I think really, and if you are someone who works better with literally setting a schedule,
Mhm.
I kind of can work like, I can
Right.
kind of keep my accountability. I'm someone who can be accountable to myself and keep it
Yeah.
moving. But if you're someone who really needs a schedule, I know a lot of people who are like, okay, Monday's my day to do this. Like
Mhm.
Tuesday's my day to do this.
Mhm.
Wednesday's my day. And, especially again, if you have kids and things, then you've got to take their schedules, back when I was a single mom, and that is when I had my horse stable, and that is
Mhm.
when, I had my kids, my schedule looked a whole lot different.
Yeah.
I was up at 5 o'clock every day,
Mhm.
out to feed the horses, out to put them out, back in to make sure the kids are eating and maybe making them breakfast, or maybe they're having cereal or whatever, get them off to school because um, a lot of the times at that time when eh, they were driven to school sometimes and
Mm.
then picked up from school. So my day looked a whole lot different. I knew,
Yeah.
by whatever I needed to do had to be done by whatever 2 o'clock to go sit in the pickup line.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I never had a real like I mean, I've always been self-employed. I've never had like a 9 to 5 kind of job. So when after the pandemic and I suddenly have a second grader and they're going to like regular school, it's like that's the first time I really had like a set schedule. And at first I was like, oh no, 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 can't do that. But now I've actually found it to be so helpful. And for me, I'm trying to figure out because I have a rhythm and I love your self-awareness of like, well, sometimes I need this and sometimes I need to work here, I need to work there. But I love that you have this like also that boundary of like, I do money stuff best first thing in the day, so I get it done, and then I have like, and then I give myself that freedom that I can do things that I want. Like I have often been a last minute kind of person, and that included doing my personal taxes. And I finally, a couple of years ago, was like, no, no, that's too much drama. That is too much stress. Nope. I'm doing them early. Like personal taxes are getting done early every year, and that's it. And that was so I love how you know, because that's just what we were talking about is like having this awareness. Like I now have some new policies. I have to figure out like my own operating system. I have um, things have changed a lot. My kid's in a private school. They go, it's 4 days a week now and not five. So I've got Fridays, and then um, they also were diagnosed 6 months ago with type 1 diabetes and have missed a lot of school. So now I'm like, what does my day look like when I'm like on the couch next to my kid and they don't feel well? Like, how am I still working when I can? And I love how you have just like, like when I feel like this, I do this, and it's not, and that's what we've been talking about is like being aware of like when you work best doing certain things, but also like having that self compassion of like, I need to go do this. I need more expansion. I need to feel more expansive in this light filled kitchen or, this part of the house, or I need a little less, I need to be by myself and I'm going to go upstairs. I love how you have like really figured that out.
Thank you. If I hope I have. But and then this is the thing too, is like when I also again when I had kids, one of the things that I didn't do that I do now is work in my pajamas.
Hmm.
And part of it was because I realized that I don't want to be caught off guard. Like I could have changed my schedule. Like I worked it out in my own head to be what worked for me. I
Hmm.
didn't want to get a call from school
Hmm.
and not be dressed and, showered because I had to go pick up my, maybe pick up
Hmm.
somebody from school and feel like, oh, shoot, this is what I look like to walk into the school. And if you're okay with that, then that's great. Like I actually have, walked into school and obviously in like horse clothes, but that was okay with me because that was my job. And so it just depends, but I didn't wanna be feeling like, "Oh, you better pull yourself together because now you've got somebody sick from school you've gotta go pick up."
Hmm.
Wanted to be prepared for if something went s sideways, which it didn't obviously that often,
Right.
but for
But
me, that just is what I was comfortable with
hmm.
at
Hmm.
that time. So, we don't have those you usually don't have impending drama like that, like we
Right.
used to.
Right. But there's another thing also that I have also seen create some real chaos and drama in some clients' homes is pets, also boundaries with pets, like where they sleep, the older ones that pee on the floor.
Yeah, we have 2 dogs. We used to have
I
3
know,
dogs,
I love seeing your
and
dogs. I love they have
I
a cool
have
place on the internet.
this is one of the this is one of the things where I have way different rules for animals than my husband does,
Mm.
and I have just given up. So I mean, they are good dogs, and for the most part, they mind their manners. Um, my hard and fast rule in the old days was, You are not sleeping on my bed."
Mm.
There
Mhm.
was a time when all 3 dogs would sleep on our bed, and it was like a jigsaw puzzle because if you like and I and there are times in the middle of the night when I would say like, "Oh, I didn't want covers anyway." Like,
Mhm.
like, "Let's let dogs be on the bed and I don't have covers." Um, I
Yeah.
I've just given up on it, and I love my dogs. And they are mostly well behaved. Um, if it were me, they would be at a different level of behavior, but
Mhm.
everybody's okay.
Yeah.
Um, and so it is what it is. and I have a different level, and my husband knows this, of how many treats should be given in a day, and when and why.
Oh,
But this is where we're at. So, I'm okay with it. And um if yeah.
yeah, yeah. Pets are a whole other level when it comes like we have guinea pigs, which I also share. They are emotional support animals, like literally. Um, are very supportive of my only child through COVID, through challenging diabetes stuff, injections and whatnot. And yeah, and they eat hay. 80% of their diet is hay.
And it's messy.
It is so messy. It is, I feel like sometimes like I live in a barn. And I have like a personal level and the vacuum does not suck it up. So I literally have to sweep it up. And yet there is something soothing about sweeping. And I have a broom that makes a very satisfying noise. I don't know, it's like shh, 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 shh. And it's just like there's something to it, and it's very satisfying when I've cleaned it up because my flooring is pretty dark and the hay is pretty light. And it's like sometimes like I can't like two, three, we now have three. And they poop a lot too, and um yeah, I mean I'm sure they would be sleeping with my kid if they had any control over their bladder and bowels, but they don't. They poop in their sleep. They just and it is a good thing that they are animals of prey and have an innate fear of us, um because they would run the place. Honestly, they would totally run the place if they knew they were not going to be eaten on a deep
Well, and actually, if you
primal
think
level.
about it, like, let's think about dogs for a minute, and
Mhm.
the fact that my dogs know, if for some reason my husband's out of town, my dogs actually act a little differently than they do when he's home, because they know that I'm not gonna maybe give him a snack all the
Mm.
time. So, and I think there's sometimes a level of me when I'm like, no, go lay down. They're like, oh yeah, she actually means it. So, like, if you think about that, not with just your animals, but like if
Yeah,
that's your personal policies as well,
right,
this is where people like are like, oh no, she really means that.
right.
But I can remember even when we just had our one dog years ago, and my husband would be off at work and he'd come home and the dog would just be like, "Ah," and so excited and all ramped up, and he'd be like, oh, was she like this all day long? And I'm like, no,
Yeah,
no, she's just chilling all day because
yeah,
we're chilling. This is what we're doing.
right.
And he
Yeah.
does tend to be the person who's like, "Ah."
Oh yeah,
So, it I'm just using that as an example
yeah,
for personal policies as well.
yeah.
Like, for people to know, like, seriously, I mean, I've talked about this before too. People who know me know, if you text me after a certain time at night, which is probably fairly early for some people, you are you probably won't get a response,
Hmm.
because I'm still somewhat old school, and still I go to bed fairly early compared to some people, and I'm not going to respond. And if you text me at 6 o'clock in the morning, there's a good chance you're not going to get a response from that either, because I don't think it's appropriate. If you are my best friend, or my one of my children, or my husband,
Hmm.
or if you're having a crisis, then yes, please. But um no. And people know that. They'll even say, I was going to call you last night, but it was 9:30 and I didn't know if you would answer. And you could
Hmm.
try it. Or some
Right.
of my friends will be like, hey, are you still up?
Mm-hmm.
with a text.
Yeah.
Can you talk for a minute? And then I have the option to be like, yeah, let's talk. So these are personal
Right.
policies that you can put in place. But I think it's so important, like even like when we're talking about your home and um,
Hmm.
all these things that, yeah, um, I don't know what you're facing with all your clients, but
Right.
I would say that it's certainly one thing when you're living by yourself, and another thing, like if you want a full blown mess when you are living by yourself, and that's great. And if you are tidy and
Hmm.
you live by yourself, then that's great too. But once you bring another person into the mix, maybe we've got a, odd couple situation, or maybe not.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
you've got people who are, and how do you find the balance, but also try to find the respect for each other as
Right.
well.
Right. Yeah. There's that. I think there's always that navigation of, even, what I've seen. I mean, I really have worked with, most of the couples over the years that I've worked with already have a great relationship. They just often want to take it to the next level. Like they just know that they need to do some work. And often, a session with me is a date night. Like literally, when I've done even in-person sessions, like, they have cheese and wine laid out. That you want something? No, like I'm their date night. Like, working on their home together and being able to have these conversations with each other. Like, this drives me crazy. This just, like, I remember that there was one couple. She was a very light sleeper, and he was a volunteer firefighter. So he would get calls all out, and he would go in there, have to go in the closet to get dressed, turn on the light, wake her up. And they were putting on an addition. And I love when people are putting additions, or, designing houses, and I pull out my pencil, because architects, again, it's like the standard has been to design from a patriarchal place of, entitled white men that have no idea what it takes to run a household. Um, I'm like, okay, so did your architect talk to you about who sleeps on what side of the bed? No. Did they talk to you about how, like, this is a big challenge in your relationship? Like, she's not getting enough sleep. She has health issues. He's, like, she wakes up pissed off. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I can't help it. I'm trying to help people. Like, so I'm like, okay, well, look, we can just you can move the door, assuming there's not a load bearing, like, the entire wall. Like, you could put a door on outside this next to the bed on the other wall. And then, and they're looking at me like, why didn't the architect say that?
Well,
you
and
know and
this is the beauty of what you do. This is
Mhm.
the is that you architects just design for function, and you design for people and
Mhm.
livability.
Yeah.
And so this is, I think, like, we could go on and on and on about all this stuff, but I think this is the beauty of what you do, and how you can help people in so many ways. And um yeah, like, these
Yeah.
things are important, and that's a whole nother level of, are you, how do you sleep at night? Are you light sleepers? Are you,
Right. Right.
whatever? Do you like it
Yeah.
cold? Do you like it hot? Do you like it a lot of covers or no covers? Or w-
Right.
there's so many things, and I really feel like we could go on and on, but
Yeah.
um, we might need to
I,
wrap it up.
I
I
know.
think that so tell our listeners where they can find you, and you know, what you can, what do you have currently out there? I know you've got a
Yeah.
lot of offers out there right
Yeah.
now. How can
Yeah.
you
Thank
currently help
you.
people right now?
Well, I do have different levels. You can find me around the internet, Kristy Iris, with a K, Kristy, KristyIris.com. You can find me on most platforms. And I work with people one-to-one. I do have a free Facebook group, Haven of My Enlightenment. And then I work with people with one-to-one with a single session called a quick shift. That is usually around one area, one topic of your home. Or if you really want to take a journey, I have a one-to-one 3-month session called Align to Shine. And right now we're in process, but I'm not sure if we're going to be opening up the doors for March or for April. But I have what I was talking about, the Biz which is for work at home conscious creatives and
And
spiritual
but you also
entrepreneurs.
don't you have your desk one? What's your desk?
I do. You know what? And I'll get you the link. The Desk for Success, which is a free class as well, that you can learn how to really help your desk bring the magic and function to your business life.
Yeah, so that
Thank
would
you.
be a great place to start as
Start.
well.
Yeah.
And I know you've got a great newsletter that you send out.
Oh,
So,
thank
if they
you.
can find
Mhm.
find her, I'll put links in the show notes, but,
Thank you.
to get on the website and get on her newsletter as well. Uh,
Yeah.
Kristy,
And
she amazing work.
oh, thank you. And Laura, so you should tell. I also want to say, like, I have your book Wish, and I first of all, I love it's so pretty. I love the shade of orange. Like they've got all these pretty. Oh, where is? Oh, here we go. Look, quotes for each page, and I just like, what is your wish for today? And I love just kind of occasionally popping in and going, oh, what is my wish for today? Like, what is it? It's very fun. So
Yeah.
and you should also share with us about what you have going on in the Queen's Code.
Well, yeah, you can see my journals back here, but I've
Mhm,
got the 3 journals, and thank you. The Wish journal is really the most self-guided. It just is your wish for the day,
mhm,
and you can do it weekly, daily, pop in come in, come out, whatever. But hopefully, if you do it on somewhat of a consistent basis, you'll see some changes. And then I've got the Light Up Your Life journal and the Winds of Change journal, Queen Code. I have the Queen Code is a 6-week journey
mhm.
to setting personal policies and
Yeah.
creating personal policies. You meet all the archetypes,
Mhm,
the queendom that represent stories that you might be telling in your life. We tell these stories of, maybe poor little me, or we tell the stories of, no one's going to do it but me. I have to do all the work. And
mhm,
each archetype, there's 6 archetypes, and each one has a different story that they tell. And so the workbooks of there's weekly, tripping over my words.
yeah,
They're weekly workbooks that
mhm,
help you go through, and busting up those stories. And some of the things you might be fine being aligned with. We Not only do we meet the archetypes and the stories, but we touch on the different areas of our lives that those
mhm.
affect, whether
Yeah.
it's financial, or even we do touch on, our space,
Mhm,
our
mhm.
workspace, our living space, and all that as well. Media,
Yeah.
relationships. So each week is a different topic, and we go through the archetypes. Um, and so that's my Queen Code VIP one-on-one. I you if you do the VIP, you get one-on-one calls with me each week.
Mhm,
Um, and then I have a Meet the Archetypes deep dive,
mhm,
which is just getting to know the archetypes. And so you can meet them and get to know a little bit about them and the stories that you tell. And then it's not the
mhm.
full
Yeah.
blown, but it gets you an idea of
Yeah,
where you
the
might be at.
archetypes are so powerful. I sometimes discount them, but I'm every time I dive into archetypal work, it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
oh, look at that there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what those things, and then of course anybody who's listening, my podcast. And what else do we have? I think, I've got my Queen Code
Oh, your Oracle cards.
to go along with the Queen Code
Yes.
program. I've got the Queen Code Oracle deck. This is currently on Deckable. It's an app where you can take it with you. The physical, even though I have the physical cards with me, it has a guidebook, and then the cards that go through my signature question, investigate, heal, and grow. And each archetype. I do not have the physical decks yet. We are delayed with the printer a little bit, but I have ordered them. So I have a wait list if anybody wants to get on the wait list for that, but you'll be very soon you'll be hearing more about the actual physical decks arriving here at my house, and where you can get them. And you don't have to be in the Queen Code to use the decks. They go hand in hand, or they are standalone. So yeah, there's a lot happening. So thank you, Kristy. I love,
oh my gosh, thank
having
you.
you, talking with you, and I love this topic. And I don't know, I think we might have to do a part 2 and part 3, because there is so much around this in our homes. And
and I, for me, it's like, being able to identify what your personal policies are, and then how does your home support that, like, enforcing that. And in your business, we could even just talk about ones about, like, in the future.
Well, and for you, just identifying, like, I think of you so many times during the day when I go, I know I should be addressing this situation in my home. Whether it's my closet, which I know, I need to declutter some clothes. But yeah, there's so frequently. But I also love, we've got to get off of here. I love, one of the tips that I love that you have is to put little affirmations at the places where you stop in your home, and one of those is like when you're filling your,
my water bottle.
From the refrigerator, and putting maybe an affirmation there, or even on your water, your drink cup for the day, or whatever. Yeah, this is one. Here's, I could show you this. So this is my, this is what I made on my, my laser cutter, a little name thing for the top of my mug. But that could be a message.
Absolutely.
So
and I love taking, like, words that are empowering to us, like, word of the year, and turning it into a symbol, which then you can put around too, which then has a certain level of privacy, personal boundaries, that people see it and they're like, look at that, what is that? But they don't know exactly what you're embodying.
Yeah. Well,
yes, I know. We could keep going. Like,
we could go forever. We really could.
I know.
But thank you to our listeners. I always love talking to Kristy. And check the show notes for more information on where to find her. And if you need to work on things in your home or personal policies, then we're your girls.
We are. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life. Thank you for listening to A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life podcast. For more information, visit my website at www.lauramuirhead.com.